Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is stage 9 of the Vuelta España 2023. Today's stage, just under 185 kilometers in length, about 115 miles in length. 2 categorized climbs on today's stage. But of course, you want to look at the last climb because it's about 8 kilometers long, stair-stepping up to the finish. So it's going to have some steep sections. They don't have it rated very hard overall for 8 kilometers, but it has some super steep sections. It's narrow, it's twisty, and when the cameras come on, we start seeing some history of what's happening earlier this morning up there at the finish of the climb. When we see with 75 meters to go on the race, you see the commentator there showing you all the mud and all the debris from the rain that they've had that's washed it onto the finishing climb here. So the organizers are going to cut the finish line down from the summit down to 2 kilometers to go, and the line will be just 50 meters before the 2 kilometer mark at the finish of today's stage. But if you want to win the stage, you got to go all the way up to the top if you want to be able to win a stage of the Vuelta España, and especially if it's stage 9 and it's today's race. Now, before the race begins, we see Neil Stevens, the director sportif for Bahrain Victorious. He says it's going to be nervous and crazy. The race is going to come in 3 sections. You got, of course, the crosswinds that are coming up early in the race. Then you're going to have some cover from the side of the hillside there. Then you have the final climb that I just got done explaining with 8 kilometers to go. So Bahrain Victorious need to be careful about breakaways if they want to get in there. And of course, they still got some GC guys if they want to play that card with Mikel Landa and a couple guys to look after for going for stage victories, is what Neil Stevens is saying. When we start looking at Luis Leon Sanchez from Astana, he says today's stage is going to be nervous, and maybe Jumbo-Visma let the breakaway go today, but he was all upset after yesterday's finish that Jumbo-Visma brought him back just before the finish of the last climb going up there when there's 4 guys left. They got wrapped up going halfway up the climb. Now, let's get into the stage proper. It's going to be a crazy stage because of all the crosswinds at the beginning of the stage. And I want you guys to keep in mind that when there's crosswinds, riders just don't think intelligently. They're going 100%, they're fighting for position, and they forget to tactically think about stuff. If I take you guys all the way back and rewind the tape to 2004 when I was riding for Webcor, we were starting the Redlands Bicycle Classic, and the first big stage was going to be crosswinds all over the place. With that team, we had 2 professionals on that team, myself and Charles Dion, and everybody else on the team had full-time jobs and stuff. So before the race got started, I said, hey guys, keep your head about you. Think about what's going on. As soon as we leave the start-finish line and get into the first crosswind section, United Healthcare is going to blow it up. I'm going to be in the front group. Most likely Charles Dion's going to be in the front group. If you guys are in the second group, third group, or fourth group, you don't do any work in that group unless, of course, nobody's working, but you give it a little time to brew and stew a little bit to see who will start working first. After that, don't worry. If somebody else is working, don't worry about helping them. Just sit on the back, ride it out, and come back up to my group. I am not going to be working in the front group because I'm not ridiculous with my tactics, and I'm not going to be driving it from 10 miles into a stage race that's 100 miles long, and it's going to have a summit finish going up to Big Bear Mountain. I'm going to want to keep my legs fresh, and I want all you guys back in that front group because once we get off the plateau, the wind's going to disappear, and I need you guys fresh. So sit on, get back to the front group, look after me before we go in the climb, and remember, when I'm in that front group, I'm only going to do the minimum. If I have to rotate through in the crosswind sections, I'll do it, but I do not want this front group to go away without having all my teammates with me, so always keep in mind to come back. Okay, cameras come on with 92 kilometers to go. We got 8 riders in the front group. We got Gabriel Xavier up there from Lidl Trek, Leonard Kamna from Bora Hansgrohe, he's the highest on general classification at 22 minutes, Jonathan Casedo from EF Education, Mateo Sobrero from Jaco Alula, Rubens Fernandez from Cofidis, Chris Hamilton from DSM, John Baronecha from Caja Rural, and Danny Navarro, my old teammate from Burgos BH, is in this front group of 8. Now they got a massive time gap with 90 kilometers to go, and they got about 8 minutes on the Peloton behind. Peloton, when the camera comes back there, it's all split up, blown up all over the places. Jumbo-Visma have 7 riders in the front group. They only started the Vuelta a España with 8, so they're looking fantastic. Sepp Kuss is up there. If you're concerned about the American not starting at the front, he did. He's always in the front group here early on this stage 9, so he's looking fantastic. And the race leaders, red jersey here, the Vuelta a España for the U.S. Now, we see Remco Evenepoel's in this front group. UAE team members are all there. Now, we start coming into 80 kilometers to go. We go back up to the group of 8. Look at the trees off to the left side of the picture there and how the front group here of 8 are echeloned over to get a better draft. Wind's coming from right to left. That's why all the riders are lined up in this direction, because the wind actually is coming through on the side, so you get a better draft by overlapping the rider's wheel instead of being directly behind. When you see the trees moving over, bending over, you know it's going to be trouble again for the professional peloton. We start seeing the professional peloton pictures from overhead, from the aerial view looking down, and we see the right turns coming up because that's the dangerous section. They're going from a tailwind section, which means it's incredibly fast with the wind pushing. They're going to make a right turn, and then everything's going to blow up. Look at the back of the peloton right there as they're coming through, and there's the Lotto Destiny feeder there, Soignier sitting over there trying to feed bottles as he's flipping around and turning in circles every time he hands off a bottle. That's a dangerous technique to use, because if you're a Soignier and you're turning your back to the peloton, that's when accidents start happening, because you can't see what's coming once you do the full circle and come back around. Well, it's Milan Minton that's coming into this back into the peloton, into this right turn, and you see the gap right away. You know Milan Minton from Lotto Destiny is going to have a hard day right here on stage 9 with 80 kilometers to go. Now we go up front. What's happening? Well, Pseudo Quick Steps, Remco Evenepoel, he's up there driving with his teammates. Jumbo-Visma's getting in the mix, and now we start seeing an explosion. 22 riders of the best Vuelta a España riders you can have are in this front group right now. Jumbo-Visma's lined up with at least 4 of their top riders, if not 5, because I believe Jan Tratnik's in there. The other 3 are in the back group chasing with FDJ that missed a split. FDJ is riding the front left and right as they're trying to bring this group back. They're getting a little help from Arkeas Samsic, but it's a nightmare up here for FDJ. Lenny Martinez right now, but he's got his teammates all wrapped around him, and it's still early in this Vuelta a España with 80 kilometers to go. We go about 6-7 kilometers after the split with about 73 kilometers to go. Sepp Kuss, the American in the race leader's red jersey, has a little scare there as it looks like he's getting ready to overlap wheels, but saves it and then pulls back hard right. Look at the back there from the Movistar rider, though he had a close call. This is the problem with the echelons. Whatever's happening at the front or any place positions in front of you in the echelon will always start to go all the way down, just like the domino effect, to whatever position you are in the back. So echelons are always dangerous. Keep that in mind. But they make for some of the most exciting racing in the world, and I love being in echelons because you are never bored. It is always exciting. Now, we're getting under 70 kilometers to go. We start seeing the front group up there still. Pseudo Quick Steps pulling hard. Jumbo-Visma's pulling hard. UAE team members have all their threat up here on the general classification because Ayuso's there, Almeida's there, and Soler is there. Jumbo-Visma have their threat. Primoz Roglic, Jonas Vingegaard, and of course Sepp Kuss, who I've already mentioned a bunch of times. We go back to the second group. What's happening? Well, Pseudo Quick Steps in trouble back here. This is all their climbers. They have 4 riders back there, and the only guy that's not a climber is Casper Pedersen. He's back there. Vervaeke is back there. James Knox is back there, and Jan Hertz is back there. Let's go back up to the front of the group and see who is with Remco Evenepoel. Well, Matteo Cattaneo, my old teammate from Lamprey, who's punching way above his weight. He's at the front and he's rotating through hard. And then they have Peter Siri up there too. So 3 Pseudo Quick Step guys, 2 with Remco Evenepoel. Now, we can start getting a little bit under 50 kilometers to go. And once they go into the valley with the hillside up there, and we see the front group of 8, the time gap has dropped all the way down to about 3 minutes, 3 minutes 50 seconds, excuse me, up there to the front group of 8, and it almost looks like they could get caught because when you go back to the peloton, Pseudo Quick Step is driving it. Remco Evenepoel, you are a knucklehead right here. There is no reason to be driving it right now. Look behind you. You see there's 3 Jumbo guys on the general classification. Sepp Kuss, Primoz Roglic, Jonas Vingegaard's there. they're sitting on. Then you see 3 UAE Team Emirates riders who stopped pulling a long time ago, and those guys are all threat on general classification too. So there is no reason to be driving it. You have benefited from nothing in this group of 22 because everybody here is a threat, minus the FDJ rider at 115 pounds back there, Lenny Martinez. He's the only one that missed it. And if you're worried about Lenny Martinez, you got a bunch of other problems with 3 Jumbo-Visma riders in this group. Now let me go into a little bit more detail before we continue the race, because with 22 riders up there, and Remco Evenepoel is the only threat on general classification for pseudo quickstep, let's say he flats. Well, he's been driving his 2 riders on the front super hard, Matteo Cattaneo and Peter Siri. So when he flats and goes back there, you think Jumbo-Visma's not going to drill it with all their teammates up there, and then UAE Team Emirates, who've been sitting on getting a free ride, are going to drill it? Those 2 teams are going to drill it as soon as you flat Remco Evenepoel. So you are ridiculous to be riding your 2 teammates at the front. When I take you all the way back to that second group, look at Casper Pedersen right now swinging off the back for dear life, trying to get back up to this FDJ Arceus Samsic train in this second group, trying to close this minute gap back up to the GC favorites. Well, finally, they start to slow down in the front group, and then with 50 kilometers to go, that's when we're going to see everything come back together as FDJ finally closed the gap for Lenny Martinez. Now, once they close the gap, everything goes status quo right now. We start seeing the breakaway of 8, whose time gap went down to about 3.5 minutes because those guys were blazing fast back there during the crosswind sections. But now with only Dylan Van Baarle on the front for Jumbo-Visma and the Peloton going wide, you know they're starting to sit up and go easy because they have nothing to benefit from today's stage. So the group of 8, the time gap starts going back out, and it'll get back out to about 5 minutes. Now with 22 kilometers to go, John Baronetcha from Caja Rural, he has some bike problems. He'll get it fixed, he'll get back in the group, and he'll be right back up there in the front. We're coming under 15 kilometers to go now, and it's my old teammate Danny Navarro from Astana teammate, way back in Astana. Now he rides for Burgo BH. He's having some problems with about 14 kilometers to go. He's going to get the back wheel fixed, he's going to get the push, and he's going to come back up to the front group again with 7 guys up there now making it 8, and John Baronetcha from Caja Rural is going to have another problem and go over to the side of the road with about 11 kilometers to go. This is a nightmare for Baronetcha right now if he wants to try to win today's stage. He'll get back up to the front group, and they're coming in to just about 8.2, 8.3 kilometers to go, and this is when the climb's going to start proper. We look over to the side. Leonard Kamna starts a sprint right before the left turn starts, so he gets himself into good position. I thought maybe, Leonard, you might have panicked a little bit much right here. I don't know, you're only in a group of 8. If you got good legs, you could ride around everyone and get back up to the front. But okay, he didn't use too much energy. He dives into the left turn first to start the climb here with the 8 riders in front. And they got about a 4+ minute gap here on the Peloton behind, being led by Jumbo-Visma still. Now, the Peloton back there under 15 kilometers to go, you can tell they're getting nervous because they're all going curb to curb, left and right. When they come into this left turn, it's Movistar that wins the battle, so we know Moss is starting in good position. Now let's go back up to the front group of 8, because right away after the left turn we're going to start seeing the first attacks. Once they come from Chris Hamilton, it starts thinning out in the back, and we see Danny Navarro coming out the back and John Baronetcha. Those bike changes and the efforts they put in must have hurt big time. Rubens back there from Cofidis, he's coming out the back too. Then you go back up front and it's starting to string out a little bit there because EF Education's Casado, he's got a gap up there to the 4 guys in front. They have a little step, where it drops down a little bit, and a few guys from the back will come back on, but then we're going to start seeing some attacks right away. The first attack's from Sobrero. He's going to follow that up with a second attack, and that's starting to string things out. We go back to the Peloton. Pseudo Quickstep's getting on the front with Matteo Cattaneo for Remco Evenepoel. Now, when I'm sitting on the Chesterfield, this time I don't actually mind him on the front, assuming Matteo Cattaneo not trying to blow this group up, and he's just trying to keep Remco Evenepoel in a good position at the front of the Peloton, mainly because it's the details, right? Yesterday I didn't like it, but today if he's not going 100%, and because the road is nasty, wet, slippery, gravel all over the place from the rain and the storms earlier in the day or yesterday's passing, right now this is a good time to keep Remco Evenepoel on the front because the climb's always going up and it's always windy and twisty, so you want to keep Pseudo Quick-Step, Remco Evenepoel out of trouble. So I don't have a problem with this as long as he's not actually trying to blow up the field on a climb that stair steps up all the way up to what used to be 8 kilometers long, but now is only 6 kilometers long, because like I said, they're going to take the time gap from 2 kilometers and 50 meters before the top of the climb. And there's no time bonuses on today's stage. Now we go back up to about 5 kilometers to go, up to the breakaway of 8, and it's now time for Bora Hansgrohe's Leonard Kamna. He's going to throw in his attack. It's going to be a nasty one right here. Gabriel Zabier from Lidl Trek. He's suffering, trying to hold on, but he can't as the gap keeps getting bigger and bigger. Sobrero from Jaco Alula. He's sitting there. He's still got a bit of a gap, but it looks like he's holding the gap of about 10 seconds there to Leonard Kamna. Then once we get under 2.5 kilometers to go at about 2.3, all of a sudden we start thinking that Jaco Alula, Sobrero, Mateo Sobrero might be able to close this gap because he's got it down to about 12 seconds. Don't look up at the screen where it says 17, because in my calculation, counting in my head, it looked more like 10 or 12, and the gap's certainly getting close, but the road is getting steeper right here too. Leonard Kamna's going to throw in a big dig, but let's go back down and look at the general classification because the GC battle has started. We see it's Almeida from UAE Team Emirates that throws in the attack. Vlasov follows from Bora Hansgrohe, latches on to Almeida's wheel. Then Vlasov's going to start taking a pull. Almeida's going to start taking a pull. And that's going to get us into 1.2 kilometers to go when they start attacking proper. Don't pay attention to the top screen there because, like I said, the distance has changed for the GC favorites because they're not going to go to the top of today's stage. Not hard anyways. Now we'll start seeing Remco Evenepoel get on the front. I was sitting on the Chesterfield like, I don't know if this is a wise idea, but later it made more sense because we're only about 500-600 meters to go as we see Remco Evenepoel pulling on the front. Then Primoz Roglic throws in a vicious attack. Look at his attack as we see Mas sitting second. We see Remco Evenepoel third, Jonas Vingegaard fourth. Remco Evenepoel starts to accelerate as Mas starts to open up a gap. He pulls even with Mas. Then Mas will start to have to close the gap because Remco Evenepoel can't to Primoz Roglic, who looks like he's pulling away. Up front, we start seeing that Almeida and Vlasov will come through the finish line here proper at 2 kilometers plus 50 meters. Then there's a little bit of gap back there to Primoz Roglic as he's driving it 100%. He's going to cross the line and about lose just under 10 seconds to the front 2 riders. But look at the gaps back there that Primoz Roglic put on Mas, who finished just with a gap between him and then a gap to Remco Evenepoel and a gap to Jonas Vingegaard, but they'll all get same time, so it's not more than a second. But the gaps start getting a little bit bigger and start adding up just under 10 seconds when we're talking Sepp Kuss in the race leader's red jersey. So he won't lose much time, but he'll lose a little bit to Primoz Roglic, Mas, Remco Evenepoel, and his second teammate, Jonas Vingegaard. Up front, as we start seeing all the GC guys have finished, well, there's still a race for the stage, right? Leonard Kamna, he's going full gas right now. You see him start looking over his shoulder with about 500 meters to go. Once he gets up to the top, he's extended the gap that was about 15 seconds throughout the stage. He's got it up to about 30, so he knows it's time to celebrate as he crosses the line and punches the air. It's to celebrate a big-time victory here for Bora Hansgrohe on stage 9 of the Vuelta a España. Second on the stage is going to be Mateo Sobrero, and then Chris Hamilton from DSM, who passed the Lidl Trek rider Gabriel Zabier, will finish out third on the stage. Gabriel Zabier from Lidl Trek will finish fourth on today's stage. Now, there are tactical mistakes on today's stage, but overall, nothing really happened in terms of the GC battle, except for when I'm talking about the tactics. Remco Evenepoel, you wore your team down a lot on today's race. When you're in a group of 22, a lot of times when you're a young kid, you're thinking, wow, this is great. We have blown the Peloton all up in pieces. Look what we have done, the Wolfpack here from Pseudo Quickstep. Well, what you really did was send 4 of your teammates out the back. If you flatted, you were in trouble, and the 2 teams from UAE Team Emirates and Jumbo-Visma were going to start pulling. If Jumbo-Visma flat, let's say it's Sepp Kuss, well, that means they still got 2 riders up there, Jonas Vingegaard and Primoz Roglic, so they don't need to wait. If Primoz Roglic flats, they still have 2 riders up there, so they have nothing to lose. If Jonas Vingegaard flats, they still have 2 riders up there, so they have nothing to lose. But Remco Evenepoel, if you flat, it's over for Soudal Quickstep, and next thing you know, you guys are going to be racing for stage victories instead of the general classification here at the 2023 Vuelta a España. So those tactics of trying to work in a group group of 22 and pull them along throughout today's stage were ridiculous. Now, let me give you one other scenario. Let's just say 22 guys were all working together, which will never happen because I've never seen it throughout my career where multiple riders in the top 10, first, second, third, fourth, fifth of the big time favorites in a Grand Tour, 6th, 7th, and 8th ever work together just because one Lenny Martinez back there has flatted out or missed a split or whatever excuse that they have for FDJ, whatever reason it could be. There's no reason that the other guys are going to start working because they don't see Lenny Martinez as a big time threat for the general classification here at the Vuelta a España. So it's ridiculous use of energy, and you've tired out your teammates throughout this first week of racing of 9 days here at the Vuelta a España. Now, when we start talking about the interviews afterwards, Sepp Kuss says he's going to stay calm and relaxed, but he's going to give everything he can for the individual time trial that comes up after tomorrow's rest day, the first rest day of the Vuelta a España. Remco Evenepoel said it was a good day for him. He didn't lose any time, and he's looking forward to the individual time trial to see what he can do. When we're talking about Jumbo-Visma, throughout this first 9 days of racing, guys, they have raced 100% as a team here when we're talking about the way they look at the finish of all these stages. We've seen Sepp Kuss, when he took the race leader's red jersey, he was working for his two teammates as he should have been early in the race. But once he gets there into the red race leader's jersey, we see him today, he's looking after himself, but you know he's always there for Primoz Roglic or Jonas Vingegaard if he has to be, because the team chemistry on Jumbo-Visma, it doesn't look like to me that they care which rider wins at the Vuelta a España as long as Jumbo-Visma does. Now, the individual time trial for Sepp Kuss, if he is to stay in the race leader's red jersey and still have a minute and a half gap there on Primoz Roglic or something substantial, you got to believe Jumbo-Visma have to start changing their strategy. When we see their director sportif at the beginning of today's race talk about Sepp Kuss is important to their strategy, but we all know Primoz Roglic and Jonas Vingegaard are number 1 and number 2 on our team and are the leaders of Jumbo-Visma. But Sepp Kuss, if you do a good individual time trial, you know all of a sudden they got 3 leaders on Jumbo-Visma if you do a good individual time trial. So hopefully Sepp Kuss has a good individual time trial and keeps that race leader's red jersey for the U.S. Like and subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next edition real soon.